Hello, everybody. This is Kiana Park with Spy Pond Partners supporting AASHTO and Federal Highways on this webinar series. I'm welcoming you today on behalf of Matt Hardy, Program Director for Planning and Performance Management at AASHTO. Matt's not able to join us until later in today's program, so I'm pinch hitting today. To all of you online today, welcome to a special webinar in our FHWA AASHTO Transportation Asset Management webinar series. Today we'll have a dialogue on the 2022 TAMP development process, something I'm pretty sure is top of mind for many of us on this webinar. This is a timely topic and we want to bring together a great roster to share some noteworthy approaches, successful practices, and common challenges. Back in December, we had a great webinar on another timely topic, Transportation Performance Management and the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, the IIJA, or the bill as another way to call it. If you missed it, I encourage you to look it up on the AASHTO TAM portal. The portal has all of the information on this webinar series, past, present, and future. Just visit tam-portal.com and click events in the main menu. You can register for upcoming webinars as they're announced, and you'll find the archive of all of the previous webinars. Links to the video and slides from today's webinar will be posted on that site. If you have any suggestions on future webinar topics, you can submit them on the TAM portal or by using the webinar's Q&A feature. We're planning to have a good Q&A session and dialogue. As part of today's webinar, please submit your comments or questions using the webinar Q&A feature. And now I'm going to turn it over to Steve Gay for a welcome to all of you on behalf of Federal Highways.
Thank you, Yana. Hey, Federal Highway Administration, in cooperation with AASHTO, is very pleased to sponsor this Transportation Asset Management webinar series. We're particularly happy to see so many of you joining us for this special webinar today, and I hope you brought your questions to ask this distinguished panel. And we're looking forward to having many more webinars to come. Today, we're going to take a look at the state's 2022 Transportation Asset Management Plans, and we have an expanded lineup of panelists today, so I'm going to keep my welcome brief. Hey, I'm excited to hear, and one of the goals is sharing some information, how can you make these TAMPs better than the last ones? We've learned a lot over the past few years. You know, a couple of issues I thought of, preparing for today was, hey, can we better see that connection between the TAMPs and TPM? And that includes target setting and the relationship of short-term targets and long-term goals. Also, the issue of risk and resiliency. I think those are all important issues. I think you're going to enjoy today's dialogue, and I hope we'll learn a lot. I'm looking forward to hearing from the speakers. I'm going to change topics for a minute. I have scheduled with most of the state DOTs regional calls sometime over the next 2 weeks. You're going to get a cancellation or postponement notice from me in the next 24 hours. Because one of the issues I wanted to talk about was what was the expectation of dealing with extreme weather and resiliency. And in this case, I'm waiting for a little more guidance. And I haven't received it yet. So I'm going to postpone it, I'll say by a week or two, and I'll reschedule that. So when you see a cancellation from Steve, it is from that request, it's going to be a postponement because I need further direction on the expectations. So sorry for getting off track there a little, but I thought that was important. And hey, I'm excited about the discussion today. With that, I'm going to pass it back to Ms. Kiana Park of Spy Pond Partners. Kiana?
Thanks, Steve. The purpose of this webinar today and the dialogue is three-part. First off, it's to raise awareness of noteworthy practices and key considerations in TAMP development. Second, it's to understand some of the approaches agencies are taking to plan and prepare their 2022 TAMPs. And finally, it's to hear from you. We're looking forward to some great questions and a great dialogue today. For the agenda today, we'll start with opening remarks from our 8 state DOT speakers sharing brief highlights and observations on the TAMP development process. Our speakers will include Don Foster of Caltrans, Toby Manthey of Colorado DOT, Karen Riemer from Connecticut DOT, Matt Hobreck from Iowa DOT, Illinois DOT, Laura Heckel from Illinois DOT, Torialasseer of Maryland DOT, Maryland SHA, and Justin Bruner from PennDOT, and Gihan El Sayed from West Virginia DOT. Following the opening remarks, we'll have a dialogue with questions from you, our audience. Please submit your comments or questions using the Q&A feature of the webinar control panel. You can do this at any time during today's presentation, and this is your opportunity to find out from other states what they're doing in the TAMPs and to learn potentially techniques and approaches that may be helpful to you. In the final portion of today's webinar, we're going to have an interactive session to collect your input on an upcoming TAM webinar mini-series focusing on TAM tools. So think about what you would like to see from a webinar series on TAM tools and be prepared to share your thoughts on that. We're going to make the slides and video available after today's webinar at tam-portal.com. So let's get started. And just a reminder to our panelists, we're trying to keep it to 3 minutes, and then we'll open the Q&A part of the dialogue. All right, first up, we'll hear from Dawn Foster of Caltrans. Dawn is the Caltrans TAMP manager for California. She's a registered civil engineer in California and has been with Caltrans for over 30 years. She's been with the asset management group since 2017, working on the initial TAMP before leading the effort for the 2022 TAMP update. Dawn.
Thanks, everybody. Well, you know, I was excited to find out I was going to be speaking on this topic. You know, Mike Johnson is actually our state asset management engineer. He is an amazing boss, and he does a lot for asset management in California. I was assigned to work specifically on the TAMP, and that's what I've been doing for the last year, actually over a year. So I just wanted to point out a few things that may be important to some of you as you're thinking about your TAMP. In California, it's actually interesting. I think we're the first state that got certified in our initial TAMP. And so our certification date was March 15th of, I believe, 2018. What that meant to us is that we had to go back to the federal rules and say, okay, so when do we need to update again? And through conversations with our federal partners, the decision is yes, we have to submit by March 15th of 2022. So, you know, we were anticipating this, and so we moved forward quickly and, you know, had a game plan on how we were going to do this. So we did, for this particular TAMP, I can tell you that we are at the draft final stage of the process, meaning that our public comment period was over last Friday. We are updating the document as we speak. Primarily, most of the comments that have come in from the public are on climate change. So here in California, we have a number of executive orders from our governor. We have legislation, and we have a number of state agencies involved in this, you know, outside of Caltrans. So it's a very big deal. This TAMP needed to incorporate as much as possible. And so we have been trying to do that in this last stage to get as much as we could into this version of the TAMP. So with that said, we should be on target, and I don't anticipate any problems submitting this to FHWA by March 15th. In addition, the challenge for California is that we have to also submit this to our California Transportation Commission, and they also have review and approval process in this process. So we've had to work pretty, quickly in the last couple of months, probably 2 to 3 months, in getting this document out for not just internal Caltrans review, but up the chain of command, making sure that it's going to meet everybody's expectations before it goes out to the public. So that all has been part of that process. Now, I know we just have a very quick time, but one of the things that was mentioned about how to begin this dialogue is what's new and exciting for this TAMP. So because this is my primary responsibility, and because I worked on the initial TAMP, my goal was I knew that we had a challenge bringing in our local partners into this process. And I really felt like I did not want a TAMP that was going to sit on somebody's shelf and collect dust. And the reason I say that is because in California, we do a whole nother document, another plan for asset management called the State Highway System Management Plan, which does a much more in-depth performance gap analysis for a number of assets on the state highway system. The TAMP in California needs to bring in the local perspective. And that's a challenge when you're trying to do that at a statewide level with over 360 cities and counties that own a piece of the NHS. That was my biggest challenge, and that's what I hoped to accomplish with this TAMP, is to get more of that. And I mean, I can go on and indicate, a lot of the other aspects of improvements that we made in this TAMP, but maybe I'll have an opportunity to do that later in the webinar. But we did make lots of improvements on data and tools as well.
Thanks, Don. Yes, you'll definitely have that chance. So now, just as a reminder, if you could put your questions for our speakers in the Q&A panel, we'll use them at the end of the introductions here. Now we'll hear from Toby Manthey of the Colorado Department of Transportation. Toby is the Asset Management Program Lead at CDOT. He spent a decade in journalism before coming to CDOT in 2012. Toby led CDOT's performance program for 5 years before transitioning to asset management in 2017. Toby.
Thanks, Kiana. So in Colorado, we are planning a more expansive TAMP compared to our 2019 effort. And if you go to the next slide. So you can see here that the 2019 TAMP was really focused on meeting the letter of the law, and we just featured our NHS pavement and bridges. That was despite the fact that we do have a particularly large program that features 12 asset classes. So that's why we're really happy to say that our 2022 TAMP will feature all 12 of our asset classes. We are designing the TAMP as a modular document, and that means that each section on each asset class are more or less standalone. And so we can decide to sort of move them around at will. And in an extreme case, if at the last minute we decide to pull one of the assets, we'll be able to do that. We do expect to have a longer in-house version of the TAMP compared to what we submit to FHWA. We recognize that we're in the midst of the Great Resignation, and we do think that with a longer version, we can almost create a document that will serve as an onboarding tool for new asset managers to know about all our processes and all about the, as a program, but also about the processes of their particular asset. In addition, I would say that in our 2022 TAMP, we are trying to integrate resilience throughout the document. So we will, of course, have a section that just focuses on risk, our risk program, our risk register, but we also wanted to make a concerted effort to explain how each section is tied to resilience. I think all elements of asset management can be tied to resilience. So for example, knowing your inventory can help you know where your threats are for your assets. And managing your asset with an appropriate life cycle plan can help you reduce the potential that you're wasting public funds. So finally, I don't think these plans are really as Caltrans says, they're not really worth that much if no one reads them. So we are looking to create a public-friendly executive summary with very nice looking graphics, and I hope to pull that out as sort of marketing collateral for the TAMP to folks like our regions and others in the department who don't really experience asset management all that much. So that's a quick look at what we're planning, and I'll turn it back over to the moderator now.
Thanks, Toby. Next up is Karen Riemer of the Connecticut Department of Transportation. Karen is a transportation principal engineer leading the project administration unit and oversees asset management, pavement management, ADA engineering coordination, contract development, and cost estimating. She's been with Connecticut DOT for 24 years with experience overseeing structural inspections, bridge management, and asset management. Karen led Connecticut's in developing its first transportation asset management plan, as well as the 2019 TAMP, and development of 2-page summary of asset fact sheets. Karen.
Great, thanks, Kiana. So in Connecticut DOT, our first TAMP, or our 2019 TAMP, we had 7 assets in there. We had our bridges, pavements, traffic signals, signs, sign supports, and highway buildings. And so we're proposing for 4 new assets to add to the 2022 TAMP. We're looking to add illumination, our ITS assets, our retaining walls, and drainage. So they're all proposed. We're running through the processes now. Not everything's complete inventories, but we're doing the best of what information that we have. Just getting things started because we found, to put placeholders for money to start addressing these assets. Once again, in our initial TAMPs, we went beyond the NHS. We include all CTDOT maintained. So for our bridges and pavements, we're also including that wider network. The asset fact sheets, we'll continue those. We have updated those every year since our 2019 TAMP, and that has actually made the process go pretty smoothly from year upon year. And then so running into a TAMP year this year, that kind of helps us get a big chunk of it done because our asset stewards are already in that process of the certain dates to have to meet along the way. And then 2 assets we're looking to change a little bit. It's our signs and our traffic signals as far as how we are going to go about addressing performance for those. So we're changing those categories a little bit for this one. Life cycle planning. So we've done a lot here in Connecticut, especially over this past year. We were so focused, I think, before on good. We were so behind on our poor bridges and even our pavements. We're really starting to change that switch now of doing, keeping our good assets good. So we have a lot of new programs to add in our life cycle planning section of things that are in progress and underway. And then, for the financial plan, that's been the big elephant in the room as far as the IIJA. But we did have a meeting of the minds we called with our FHWA Connecticut division, our chief engineer's office, and our Connecticut DOT finance group, as well as asset management. And it was really helpful to make sure that we're all on the same page. So I do recommend that for anybody who maybe hasn't had those conversations to kind of, put that together and get everybody in the room. We have concerns about that though with inflation and project delivery, as well as setting some of those targets with that funding, because we're not sure how much inflation is going to take of what that funding that we're expecting to get. So, but one thing that we do have here is every year, in addition to our asset fact sheets, we do a 25% over and under of our current budget projections. So we're thinking we can just use that for some of the targets to say for the IIJA. So that's kind of our plan going forward at this point. Things might change. And then just a couple of things I just want to note, with our asset stewards, we do bi-weekly meetings with them. We do a lot using SharePoint and Microsoft Planner to manage all the tasks and things to be done. It's been really helpful, so I do recommend that. And then just want to mention too, so our timeline, our TAMP is actually due in July of 2022, but we are striving for an April 30th draft. And part of that is we have a large part of our workforce that are all able to retire. The retirements have already started and will continue through June 30th when the contract actually changes. So we're trying to get ahead of that because nobody wants to be reviewing a TAMP in the last few weeks before they retire. So we're trying to get that done more in the May timeframe. So that's what I have for today. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. Next up, we have Matt Hobreck of Iowa DOT. Matt is the Transportation Asset Management Administrator at Iowa DOT. Matt currently serves as the chair of the AASHTO Subcommittee on Asset Management and is a member of the TRB Asset Management Committee. He's been involved in numerous national conference planning committees and NCHRP panels. Matt's career experience is primarily in the field of data analytics, and he's been at Iowa DOT since 2010. Matt.
Oh, thank you very much, Kiana. Yeah, so at Iowa, we're a little bit more focused on than some of the prior states in just looking at pavements and bridges. We do go beyond the NHS and cover all state highways, the entire state highway system. But our asset management plan has been about the pavements and bridges, and we'll continue to focus on those asset classes. And really, we look at least today, the way we do business, those are the primary drivers of kind of our project selection and our investments. So that it sort of makes sense that we would focus on those assets, at least as under the framework that we currently operate under. We're in the process of developing our fourth TAMP. We actually did have a TAMP prior to the first required TAMP. So that was in 2016. Actually got published within a few weeks of the time that the final rules were put forth for the TAMP. And in 2016 and 2019, both we had some consultant support to help put our TAMP together. But this year, we're going to be doing that solely in-house. I work in the organizational improvement unit, and we have our systems planning group, and the lead author for our TAMP is from systems planning, and she also is the lead author on our 2022 statewide long range plan update. So that is also in the works and will be done this year. We view that as a real opportunity to look for synergies between those two documents. Having the same author leading both of those efforts will give us the opportunity to kind of cross-pollinate between the asset management plan and the long-range plan, and kind of bring some synergy to those two ideas in those two documents. We do have a pretty broad-based group that informs our TAMP from our TAM implementation team, and of course we'll be updating some of our practices that have changed in slight ways regarding lifecycle planning and so forth, but and of course put some additional emphasis on some of the resilience efforts that we have and have evolved since the 2019 TAMP was completed. We're also gonna, the only place we'll really have external support is with a risk workshop, kind of updating our risk register. We haven't updated that risk register in a while, so it's due for an update this year, and that is the one place where we will have some external support, is in developing that risk register and helping to beef that up a little bit. So that's kind of our plan. I would call it more of a mild update rather than an overhaul. We, as was mentioned earlier, by some of the other states, we do want this document to be used, so we're very conscious about the length of it. Our TAMP is quite short and quite graphical. It's meant to really be used by senior leadership and external partners more than as an internal document. So that's kind of how we positioned our TAMP, and how we can plan to continue to carry it forward into the future.
Thanks, Matt. Up next is Laura Heckel of Illinois DOT. In Laura's current role as the asset management engineer, she coordinates the Transportation Asset Management Plan, works with asset management committees, manages submissions to federal highways, and coordinates with central bureaus and the districts to ensure that TAMP objectives are followed in line with other department goals. Laura's experience includes stints working for Illinois DOT, Applied Research Associates, and her own consulting firm. Laura.
Thanks, Kiana. I'll just full disclosure right from the beginning. We did not get our initial TAMP certified until November 1st, 2018. So that has given us more time this year, particularly to respond to some of the changes that are coming out of the IIJA. We're not under the gun like some of you are and trying to work that in at the last minute, just because we were a little bit longer getting done 4 years ago. We are not going to do a complete rewrite from the ground up. We feel like we laid a pretty good foundation with our 2018 and then 2019 TAMPs, so we're going to use that as the foundation. A lot of the updates are going to include the implementation progress we have made. An example of that is that on the pavement side, we have developed and implemented a pavement policy that's consistent with the life cycle planning we outlined in the TAMP. And we've also developed and implemented a bridge preservation guide. So we want to document how those have been worked into our processes for asset management in the last 4 years. Our initial TAMP was just pavements and bridges. However, it was all pavements and bridges, not just the NHS. And for this rewrite in 2022, we're going to stick to pavements and bridges. We're in the process of implementing that asset management system computer program. And until that's done and we've got a really good feel for how that's going to work with our pavements and bridges, which are our costliest and most important assets, then we don't feel like it's time to add other assets quite yet. One of the things we will be adding to the 2022 TAMPs is adding a resilience content in response to the IIJA. We already have an all hazard study that had been completed in 2017, and the results from that are going to be incorporated into our asset management system. And that already included both climate change and cybersecurity to our individual assets. So we're going to include that in our asset management system, also in our 2022 TAMP. And we're getting ready to update that study as well so that our data reflects the current climate change models. Some of the other things we're going to be doing and changing from our 2019 TAMPs, we'll be enhancing our life cycle planning, particularly as we get that asset management system online that'll allow us to do better cross-asset optimization and better life cycle planning. We'll be updating our TPM targets. Again, since ours isn't due until November 1st, and our TPM targets have to be updated October 1st, it just fits in really, really well together, like a couple of jigsaw puzzle pieces to include all of the updated TPM targets into the 2022 TAMP. As I mentioned, we're going to enhance our risk and resilience management in our TAMP. And we'll consider adding additional assets once we get more comfortable with our pavements and bridges and our asset management system. And that's all I've got, Kiana.
All right, thanks, Laura. Now we'll hear from Torialasseer from the Maryland SHA. Toria is the Assistant Division Chief of the Innovative Planning and Performance Division and manages its performance management and federal transportation asset management programs, overseeing the freight planning and climate risk and resiliency programs as well. She holds a Bachelor's of Science degree in Civil Engineering from Morgan State University and worked as an engineering consultant for 6 years in Maryland, Mississippi, Louisiana, and Tennessee before joining Maryland SHA as a transportation project manager in 2014, managing design, bid, build, and design build transportation projects. Toria.
Thank you, Kiana. So I'm excited to talk about the Maryland TAMP. Our TAMP is due in October this year, and we too want a document that doesn't just sit on the shelf. And I hope Meredith Hill, who led the development of our initial and final TAMPs, is okay with me sharing this anecdotal story where we actually witnessed someone use our TAMP that we were, she was so proud of, to kill a fly. So we want our while we want it to be, utilized in different ways, that wasn't really one of them. Like many, we had a document that we wanted to make sure initially that we met the requirements. And I think this time is our opportunity to be more dynamic in how we communicate the story of how all us NHS partner owners manage the system to FHWA. And we want this document to readily reflect our growth and the changes in the way that we've thought about some things in some cases. we'd like to this time around just enhance our discussion of how we acknowledge and address the relationship between the TAMP and other documents and processes. For example, we plan to include a section where we talk about our last 3 years of performance and actual expenditures on the NHS. Like, we've done these consistency reviews, submit these reports, and we want to review what conclusions can be drawn from the results of those last 3 years of submissions, and take a look at or discuss, if or how it means that we need to reevaluate our life cycle planning or financial strategies going forward. We want to, we have over the last several years an enhanced understanding of, and we want to communicate the interrelatedness of these, of our TAMP efforts with other performance-based plans and programs. Like some of the things that we talk about, and we're currently developing our state freight plan, and we kind of work together to align kind of how we discuss certain things, and some of the processes we used in the development of that state freight plan we're wanting to implement in the development of our TAMP. We also want to enhance our risk narrative by not focusing strictly on climate risk and resilience, but we want to also touch on our plans for growing our enterprise risk kind of area, and talk about resilience, not just in terms of climate resilience, but resilience to other risks, and also look at how we can be resilient even in some of our processes. But with that said, we've done a lot of good work in the realm of climate risk and resilience, and we plan to capture all of it. We are proposing at this time to include 2 additional assets, including stormwater and geotech assets, but that decision has not, however, been finalized at this time. And in terms of our TAMP development process changes, one of the things we learned from the last TAMP was the value of having everyone on the same page, stakeholders, partner owners, leadership, given that, for the example, like our target setting approach, given that we have to answer for those targets, and our, specifically our experience was answering for those in the mid-performance period progress report, we have to, stand by what we've adopted. And we also understood a little better this time the relationship between the 10-year performance objective, what we've called it in our TAMP, and the long-term target setting approach. And in our case, determined that it needed to be different from the 2- and 4-year target setting approach in support of our overarching MDOT objectives. We also have an increased focus on partner, owner, and stakeholder engagement. We have 16 partner owners to coordinate with, much less than the likes of Caltrans, but we're engaging with them, and seeking their buy-in on our proposed TAMP development processes before actual implementation, so that there are no surprises down the line. And we're writing a document for all partner owners, and so we want them to be in agreement about how we plan to communicate that story. So, thank you.
All right, thank you, Toria. Now we'll hear from Justin Bruner of Pennsylvania DOT. Justin is the Bridge Asset Management, or BAM, Section Chief in the Bureau of Maintenance and Operation at PennDOT. The BAM section is responsible for monitoring and reporting statewide summary bridge conditions, setting and monitoring PM2 federal targets and goals, and creation, implementation, and maintenance of PennDOT's Bridge Asset Management System. Justin also serves as the PennDOT Asset Management Engineer. In this role, he's responsible for the development and delivery of the TAMP, as well as key management tools utilized for the TAMP, including a global asset risk framework and scoring methodology. Justin.
Thanks, Kiana. That was a mouthful, wasn't it? Okay, so for the 2020 TAMP, PennDOT's made a lot of changes. Our 2022 TAMP. Our 2019 TAMP was pretty good. We did it mainly in-house. We had some outside assistance in that, and we learned a lot of things. So moving forward for the 2022 TAMP, we had a lot of things that we wanted to address. And fortunately, I feel as if we're on track to address most of those. The biggest one, which includes the non-NHS bridge and pavement assets. Fun fact for us, The NHS only makes up about 28% in a count perspective of the bridge assets. So that should just kind of put in perspective this just the level of effort that then goes into the non-NHS paving and bridge. And that's really a big part of our story, so we wanted to include that. So it's important that it's in there. So we're happy to note that that's going to happen for this year. And additionally, in our 2019 TAMP, we had done a lot of our projections based off of some Excel tools, some just call it non-traditional methods of forecasting. So much has changed in the last 4 years. We've managed to implement some really great systems. We've invested a lot in those. And at this point in time, with our new projections, we're much more confident with those, and we don't have to add the level of disclaimers that we had to do that in the past. We've also really focused on our risk program. In the past, Pennsylvania doesn't really have a lot of incredibly interesting things happening to it from an extreme weather perspective. Yes, we get flooding, but we don't have all the hurricanes and tornadoes and all that stuff. So we've managed to come up with a methodology that averts risk down in our manuals and procedures. So what we wanted to do was expand on that, and for this year we've actually managed to expand our communications base as to who we're talking to just basically identify the new risks that are coming out. So we're excited to see that. We're sending out a survey. We have that information coming in shortly. And finally, our due date is in April. So unfortunately for us, like many of the states that have submitted them early, we can't include our 2021 pavement data in this, which prevents us from then making new TPM targets to include in the TAMP, which is a little unfortunate, but it's a resulting of the rulemaking. So with that, I think that's all I have.
All right, thank you, Justin. And for our final overview, we have Gihan El Sayed of West Virginia DOT. Gihan serves as the Deputy State Highway Engineer and the Chief Engineer of Programs and Performance Management at Virginia DOT. In this role, Gihan oversees programming, planning, and performance management divisions, as well as managing the statewide Transportation Asset Management Plan. Gihan.
Thank you, Anu. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to give you a quick overview about the state transportation system in West Virginia. We're in like unique situation. We own almost 90%, own and maintain almost 90% of our roads. So you can imagine the challenge we're going through, and also the same thing for 7,000 bridges. And it's true that the NHS portion represents a small percentage of our total road system, but it's actually carries the almost 55% of our VMTs, and similar for our NHS bridges, almost 60% of the square footage. So with that being said, we decided to stick with the main assets, pavement and bridges on NHS for the TAMP at this time. We're definitely, there's an ongoing effort in improving our data collection methods and increasing the inventory of different assets, like especially culverts and guardrails and traffic signals. We feel like we can do a better job in those, and we can include them in the TAMP, but we did not feel comfortable reporting on those yet. So that's as far as the general coverage of the TAMP. Also, we're focusing on updating our risk register and the mitigation strategies. In the previous TAMP, our approach was to include different organization, agency management and functional roles, and we plan to maintain and improve the approach. Especially, we have now a new administration with totally new vision, and we want to ensure we get the same level of involvement and feedback throughout the organization structure for that part of the TAMP. And we just wanted to make sure that we're capturing all the perspectives. Other area that we're planning to focus on this time, to add another component on the risk side, is to address resilience, especially looking at the projects and tools that how we can mainly adding like these projects and solutions, how they can support the goals of resiliency that will be in the to be developed very soon, the state resilience improvement plan. And we're planning also to tie the resilience plan to our LRTP. So this part we're definitely working on and was not addressed in the previous TAMP. Another area that I personally feel that was the best part that we worked on since the development of the last TAMP is really communicating the TAMP story in West Virginia. We noticed that we were rushing last time, tried to meet the requirement, and didn't do a good job in involving our districts, different stakeholders, and we were focused this time that we're changing the way we're doing business. We're moving toward to be more data driven. We look at the performance more than meeting the requirement. This is the way that we want to move forward and monitor everything we're doing and check how we're improving the way we're our process and how we're working on improving the condition based on accurate data. So one of the main components we're going to add in there, and it's going to address the implementation, is to show our as part of like standard operating procedures that we put in place to assist the agency in our annual update and standardize the TAMP process in general. We have different, we will outline the time, not only the time, the roles and responsibility within the agency, as well as the approval and accountabilities roles too. So that we have SOPs for the project selection, the budget and finance, bridge and pavement management system calibration, and we'll include full description of that in the process and how we see this improving the whole TAMP process and implementation process in the state. Also, we recently we're in the preparation of having a new STIP, and the TAMP will definitely drive the STIP. And the recently developed LRTP, we had it was really all about the TAMP goals, short term and long terms, and included different scenarios. And so we're going to touch on that in the TAMP, in the current version of the TAMP. Also, we're looking at updating our risk register and implementing a more formal tracking approach in that part. And finally, we're also looking at touching about some enhancement tools and methods we're testing now on our bridge and pavement management system for improving the projections in the life cycle cost and gap analysis. So this is the main areas that we're looking at, and also we're going to focus also on showing how helpful it is to tie all the plans together, and we're seeing paying off in improving all the quality of the TAMP process that we're working on right now, especially between the STIP and the TAMP. And we recently have a whole reorganization about related to the TAMP, and a newly created division called Performance Management is overseeing that whole process, and it has HPMS and under it too, and it's responsible of all the federal performance management and plan and LRTP, and mainly all the plan in the states are grouped under one chief. So it's really helping in advancing the TAMP implementation process. That's all I have. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Gihan, and thank you everyone. What an amazing set of kind of communications you've all done about what you're doing. So can we have all of the panelists and Steve and Matt Hardy come back on camera, and we're going to start the question and answers and dialogue. And so just the format is going to be, I'm going to take the questions that are in that the audience has asked. I also have some backup questions as well. And some of them I'm going to ask you to just raise your hand, and so we can all see that. And some, if you want to respond to the question, just raise your hand and to let me know that you'd like to say something about it. And then also just chime in if you have questions to delve further into what you've heard from your co-panelists as well. So there is the, okay, now I've lost my Q&A bar, so I gotta get back there. All right, so the first question was specifically to Toby on the module model of CDOT's plan to add additional asset classes. Have you received guidance from Federal Highways as to whether to include optional asset chapters and to make it public? I'm not sure if I'm asking this exactly correctly, but I think it's the question of, are you having any kind of dialogue with Federal Highways about adding additional assets and how you're going to be communicating them in your TAMP?
You know, we've definitely brushed upon it before in smaller webinars with just DOTs. Our plan right now is to hit the high points of the requirements of the TAMP and the law for each asset. So we'll have an inventory, we'll have performance measures, we'll have financial analysis, that kind of thing for each asset. There's extra stuff that we don't think particularly FHWA is all too worried about, like the components of every single ITS device and how they relate to each other. So it's that kind of detail that we're going to hold back. But you know, we have not heard anything negative from FHWA in terms of adding more assets, nor have they given us you know, super specific criteria of what has to be in there. But our plan is to follow the requirements for pavement and bridges pretty closely for the FHWA version.
Thanks, Toby. All right, this is a question for everyone. This is going to be a raise hand question. And the question's about whether you're including your pavement and bridge targets, the 2 4-year targets, in your TAMP, the ones that are due in October. And I think we've already heard from some of you whether that you're going to do it or not. But let's do, so there are 3 options. Yes, you are going to include them in your TAMP. 2, you're not. Or 3, you have not decided. So let's start with how many of you, but with a raise of hands, are including the 2 4-year targets in your 2022 TAMP? Okay, 5 of you out of 8. How many of you are definitely not including it in your 2022 TAMP? And how many, I'm assuming the rest of you are undecided, to be determined?
Can we add a 4th category?
Okay, yes.
Can we just say that we're going to repeat our targets from last time since we don't have new information to update them?
Okay, yes. So you're including them, but they're not going to be the ones that are going to go into the October submittal. Okay. All right. And the next question is, what were your primary drivers for the changes you're making to your TAMP from your 2019 to the current? Was it internally driven or externally driven, or, you know, or was it things you saw in your in other TAMPs, because you know you've been able to view other TAMPs? So the open question, raise your hand if you want to respond. If you don't raise your hands, I'm going to call upon you. All right, Laura.
It both. So we've actually done quite a bit with implementation since 2019, and we really want to document the strides that we've made, and then outline what are the next steps beyond that. One of the things that's been really actually kind of exciting here is for the Part 667 compliance, we developed a GIS tool that maps every one of the places where we've used emergency relief funds since 1997. And one of our districts said, hey, can we add another tool where we can overlay that map right on top of our multi-year program so that they can see at a glance, these are the projects that we need to make sure that we consider all of the emergency events and the resilience of those assets. So I want to document in the TAMP that, hey, we've done this, we've made these forward strides, and then we're going to expand on that with incorporating our all hazards data and that kind of thing.
Great. Is it Toria?
Laura, we can relate. We actually have a tool called the Climate Change Vulnerability Viewer, where we actually have a lot of climate change like related data. Thankfully, Elizabeth Habig, she used to manage our climate risk and resilience program at PennDOT SHA, and she had the forethought to develop this viewer, and also she coordinated our initial process whereby we worked with the Office of Maintenance to establish an actual process for tracking. Like initially it was like, I think we're only required to keep 3 years of records for those kinds of events. And so we kind of automated the process. So it was a kind of joint partnership or agreement between the Office of Maintenance, our OIT people, the data governance division who manage the GIS layer, and our office to track those and keep a layer, our Part 667 layer, we call it, in the viewer. And now we're trying to actually enhance that process even to automate it such that when we have the inspectors go out after those emergency events, we have them input into we're trying to create basically an app of sorts where they input their information and we have certain kind of markers for them to input, and that'll get uploaded to our layer automatically. And so speaking of risks, one of the risks for many people is loss of institutional knowledge. And so when Elizabeth did that, her initial efforts, most of the people who were in that room are gone. And so if no one's there to remember what the agreement was, if it's automated, then we don't have to necessarily count on someone to remember. But also we learned personally on our end, the focus was making sure we meet the requirements, understanding the requirements and meeting the requirements for the initial and final TAMPs. And now we kind of have the time and experience to see kind of how these different things relate to each other. And we've developed a lot of process, even the consistency determination. Like we found, we had in our financial plan, we had some well-informed estimates of what some spending would be on others' behalves. And now we have developed a process whereby we work with the MPOs to engage the locals and request their information, their actual expenditure information, for them to inform our consistency determination report. And then we're using that same process to get the financial plan data. And so some of these things that have come out of actions following the TAMP are now integral parts of our processes.
Thanks, Toria. Gihan, did you have your hand raised?
Yes, I also, for us, it's both from the internal part, it was more lesson learned, like I mentioned from the previous TAMP, that's really, we need to communicate, do a better job in communicating and engaging all the stakeholders. It was obvious to us, the TAMP was mainly in the central office. We have 10 districts. These 10 districts were just providing data, but they were not really engaged in the process. We didn't educate them enough about what the asset management principles and all of that. And really, one of the things we learned is leadership support is a key. And we have that right now in for example, we started doing workshop with all the districts, and the commissioner will present in each one of them, and the messages will be laid there. This is how we're doing business. This is the TAMP will drive our decisions, and so it really made a huge difference. So that's why we're one of the the real thing is internal. As far as other things too, I personally benefited a lot from like the listening to other states, looking at their different TAMPs, and we got inspired by by ideas. It's really helpful. All these TAM webinars and all of that would just make you think that, oh yeah, there's stuff that we can really do that we were not even thinking about and include in the TAMP. So it was very helpful. Thank you.
All right, this is a raise of hand question. How many people define their state of good repair that's for the TPM targets for bridges and pavement in the TAMPs? The raise of hands, so the question is, if you do include them, raise your hands. A definition of state of good repair. So 4 of you, so half of you. All right. All right. So the next one, the question is one that volunteered to answer. So, and I think Toby already answered it in his overview. The question I'm going to ask about resiliency. So, how are you addressing resiliency in your TAMP 2022 TAMP, and how is it different from your 2019 TAMP? So, and I think Toby said he's got it, both in the risk area, but across each of the areas as well. And so, do you have an approach? Steve, you have a additional question.
I don't know if I should say this, because I'm looking at Dawn here. If you access California's draft asset management plan, it's available online. I just checked. They have a chapter that's titled something like Risk and Resilience, and it addresses some of the key issues. And they didn't see it quite like that a few years ago. So they've done a nice job with that.
Great, thanks, Steve.
Someone wants to add? Yeah.
So, yeah, thanks, Steve. Sorry, I don't know where my raise hand feature is, so I apologize.
Oh, no, you have to use that. You have to look for the.
Oh, you just want me to do this? Oh, okay.
Go to webinar and have the raise hand function.
Okay, well, our WebEx allows all of that stuff, so I was like, where is that? Okay, no, just to follow up with Steve. Yeah, I didn't really go into all the changes we made in our TAMP. We made a lot of changes to the TAMP. We had a really good TAMP, in my opinion, from 2019, but it needed to be reworked. It needed to be updated. We needed better tools. And we really tried to expand it to, like, as I mentioned earlier, to include more about climate change. But every chapter, I mean, we updated performance targets. We updated our life cycle planning. We actually did our analysis using our pavement management system, which we didn't do in the initial TAMP. As Steve said, our risk management chapter was redone to say managing risk and building resilience. And all of the improvements we made in the TAMP, we've documented a lot of that in our process improvements chapter. So if anybody would like to take a look, you're welcome to, because it is posted online. So
thanks, Dawn.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Toby.
Yeah, I did address this quickly. I wanted to hit on kind of the previous question and this question, is that we are taking the scorecards that FHWA produced for all the TAMPs seriously. And one of the criticisms of our TAMPs was that we didn't focus in on the gravest, the most serious risk enough, like what are your top risk, as opposed to discussing all risk. So we're trying to identify the top risk for each asset, as well as agency-wide. And then the other thing we're trying to do on the advice of a consultant is we have a lot of amazing tools and really innovative tools for risk, but they often seen kind of fragmented and like pilot projects. So we are developing some graphics that show just how all the pieces of risk and how our analysis pieces fit together to form a kind of complete resilience or risk picture at CDOT.
Thanks, Toby. How about others? Do you want to share what you're doing in terms of resiliency in your 2022 TAM? Okay, no.
I'll share. I mean, we're not doing, you know, we're struggling a little bit through it. We were hoping to get the guidance kind of to help to make sure we're, you know, heading the right direction. We have had that, we've started our discussion with our asset stewards as far as when they're doing the financial, I mean, the life cycle planning section of our TAMP, you know, to be thinking of that. Where, you know, where are some of the things that we're probably already innately doing, but to also document that. We also have a new unit at the Connecticut DOT, which is the Sustainability and Resiliency Unit. They're through our planning, like we're through the Engineering Bureau, they're through the Planning Bureau. So we've actually been meeting with them on a regular monthly basis, just trying to understand what their kind of objectives are and what they're heading for. They're kind of focused a lot on, you know, our governor put out an executive order that really kind of focused on sea level rise and then our drainage, in particular areas there. So we're trying to kind of work together to figure out, you know, what they're kind of working towards, what we include into the TAM from them, but then also working within each of our assets. So we're crawling through it, I guess I'll say.
All right, here's a question from the audience. So has anybody found an effective way to collect financial plan information from local owners of the NHS? Maybe we'll start that. Okay, Dawn, go ahead. Oh, you're on mute.
Got it. I just wanted to follow up with what Toria said, because I think we did something similar. So in California, our state controller's office collects all expenditure data from every city and county that own public roads in California that's related to transportation. So, and within that, they have an open data portal, so anybody can go in and take a look at that expenditure data. It's actually broken up into revenues and expenditures. So once I found that, it was a matter of being able to take that information and do an estimate for the NHS. We don't collect or report on National Highway System expenditures either at the state level or at the local level. So that's our challenge with the TAMP. Until we get our systems in place to start documenting based on NHS, we're going to have to continue to do estimates. But anyways, it sounds like Toria has a similar system, so she can collect that data from MPOs or local agencies.
So Dawn, what you're doing is you take the total and then you take the percentage of NHS in that geography.
The inventory
estimate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So, and what we did is then we took that data and sent it back out to the MPOs and said, you know, because they don't have a lot of time to do this. I mean, that was the bottom line. We had to do a lot of work for them, and this was one of those. So we came up with an estimate, sent it back out to them, said, if you know of any, if this doesn't even look reasonable, let us know. And in fact, like one of our MPOs came back and said, no, we're doing a lot of work on bridges on I-5, Interstate 5, and this is not reflective. So when we did our performance target analysis, we were able to have them update that information. So it was very helpful, but we had to do a lot of that legwork ourselves. We wouldn't have gotten through the TAMP in such a short time without it, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. Is anybody? Yes, Toria.
Yeah, Don, that's kind of what we had done kind of the first time. And then starting last year, actually, we were trying to get more refined information, given that we're doing these consistency reviews and we're having to account for, you know, compare, did you spend what you said you'd spend? And it's like, well, now it's very plain, you know, whether or not we did. And so we wanted to get refined information. So starting last year, we started meeting with MPOs to say, here's how we talk about the financial plan. And we talk about work types in the TAMP. And so what we do in reporting annually is by work type, how much did we spend? Are you able to do that? Here's how we define, what activities we feel like fall into these work types. Are you able to give us then your expenditures in the last year? And they did return those things to us. So it's I would say that's worked for us so far. Like it seems to be like no one balked at it. They didn't complain this is extra work, they couldn't do it at this time. And then out of that, one of our MPOs thought, because so what we did was we went to our MPO who reached out to the local owners on our behalf that fell under their jurisdiction. And so we all came together, given the relationship between target setting and the actual management of target setting by the MPOs and the actual management of the assets by the local owners. So the MPO added to their UPWP that they would start collecting that information from the local owners themselves, and then we could actually just go to them for that information. And so that makes it even that much more kind of efficient.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. All right, here's another question from the audience. Do any of you want to share the smart way that you're including how your approach to how you're populating your initial construction work type cell in your financial plan?
Yeah, if it only had qualified it as a smart way, then I probably could. I mean, the way that we have kind of done this, we don't have a lot of really, new construction on the state highway network. So what we do have are major reconstruction projects where we're also adding capacity. And in those cases, that would, I think, qualify in at least the new capacity part of that would qualify as new construction. So, for example, if we have a major bridge that we're replacing, we might say, okay, we're going to, but we're taking that from a 4-lane bridge to a 6-lane bridge. Then we would say, well, we'll count 2/3 of those dollars as a replacement and 1/3 as new construction. So, I mean, it's a very simplistic kind of way. So I don't think it quite meets the qualification and the question of smart, but it is a way to do it that it's somewhat defensible and hopefully isn't like vastly wrong.
Yeah. Laura.
Ditto, exactly what Matt said. We are not building new roads through cornfields anymore. It's the capacity addition. So we're splitting it up exactly like he said. In our planning system, there's a program classification code for every project, and every project gets one code, and that code is tied directly to a TAMP category. So for the project like Matt was talking about with the bridge, 2/3 of it would be under one number that's initial construction, or 2/3 it would be the replacement, and it would go to that TAM category. And then there would be another number, and those two projects are tied together, and the 1/3 of it is mapped directly to the initial construction. So when we get to doing the implementation documentation at the end of the year, I can have them send me a report that's all classified by TAMP category, and everything is mapped 1-to-1. And this brilliant crosswalk, I guess they had redone everything right before I got into this position at the end of 2018. And for them, it was huge. But for me, it was like, oh, great, we're hitting the ground running.
Great. Anybody else want to share? All right. So the next question is, let's make it a hand raising and then you can comment, which is, so there are 3 options again. So the question is, are you using your IIJA/BIL funding in your financial plan in your 2022 TAMP? And the options are yes, no, don't know yet. Okay, so how many are yes?
Qualified, yes.
Okay. 2, no. Any people are no? Okay. And then don't know yet. There's the qualified yes. Okay. Okay. So anybody want to comment on
So
Yes.
the qualification is that we are including the formula funds, but nothing from the grant programs, because we can't be assured that we're going to get any of those grants. So
Yeah.
it's only the formula funding out of the IIJA that's going to go into the TAMP.
Yeah. All right, Dawn, and then Matt.
So I said no because we have to submit to FHWA in the next 3 weeks. So we, at this point in California, don't know how much money is going to our local agencies and MPOs and how much is going to stay at the state. And historically, it's about a 60-40 split, but with the requirements, especially in the bridge program that's condition-based, that may change. So we're still considering, and more than likely we'll update and have time to do that during the review period, but our initial submittal is not going to include it.
Okay, Matt.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, you know, since we have an idea of what the funding will be, but we still are, I think, still operating under continuing resolutions. So, you know, we don't actually have the money. We did have some projects that we've gone ahead and advanced, and we've done some things, but and we're sort of planning on the money. But I think given our timeline, we're not due until July. You know, there's always a chance that we would have to unwind that if who knows what happens, right? So that's kind of the plan for us.
All right, so here's the final question. So are any of you doing anything more than you did in your previous TAMPs to work with your local NHS owners? So I think, Dawn, you answered yes, for sure, in your overview, but how about others? Sounds like no. All right.
I mean, for Connecticut, we're kind of doing the same process we did last time. We have our meeting coming up with them. We have very little that's owned locally for the NHS. The state owns the majority of it. There's only 14 bridges owned locally and 150 lane miles. Yeah. So, and of those, we do all the inspections on them anyways. We collect all the pavement data. So for us, it's not as much of a, not like California. We're really lucky in that sense.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, everybody. We'll continue this dialogue in the next part of this webinar, which is about the TAM tools mini series. This is what we're proposing as the next webinar, which will be in April. So it will kick off this webinar series on TAM tools, and we'd like to get your input on it so that it can help us shape it. So I'm going to turn it over to Matt Hobreck, whose idea it was to have a TAM tools mini-series.
Well, I think I actually should give credit to the community here. This is something that we hear frequently, people asking questions about, you know, hey, what tools are you using, or how are you getting that done, or how are you approaching this particular problem? And this topic could be pretty wide ranging. And so I think what we wanted to do with this conversation today was to try to get a sense of what really are the questions that we can try to address in a webinar mini-series format. You know, are we primarily interested in talking about tools for pavement and bridge management, for example, or are we interested in cross-asset allocation questions, or you know, linear referencing system, GIS type things. There's a wide range of different types of tools that agencies use to support asset management efforts. I'm sure there's many more that I didn't mention, and I think that it would be helpful to kind of get a little bit of a sense of what are some of the things that we could try to tackle in this format that would be valuable to the community and hopefully engaging to you and your agency and the challenges that you're facing.
Yeah, I think, you know, during the today's webinars, one of the thoughts I, you know, heard from the sharing was, you know, some of the homegrown tools that agencies have developed, like the one that Toria shared on the climate viewer. And so like we want to kind of organize the webinar series. So imagine what we will do is kick it off in the April webinar that's scheduled, but then for whatever number of weeks, we would have additional webinars. So what should be the topics, or kind of organizing themes for each of those? Would it be, TAMs, like one webinar could be on just implementing the total asset management systems. Another could be on analytical tools or visualization, or it could be it could be by assets. I mean, there are multiple ways you can organize it. So that could, your thoughts on that would be helpful. The other could be, what's the pain you're feeling, and what do you want to know more about because the pain you're feeling. So so on the screen, Perry has put up a Manthey code. If you could go to Manthey, we think that might be the easiest way for us to share ideas, is people can start putting their thoughts, then we can all see it, and maybe that can be a trigger for greater kind of discussion of that theme. All right, so the first one up is, I'd like to see a vendor showcase of tools that are available, not services, but specifically tools. So almost kind of doing an open call out to vendors and saying, come in and share, and we'll design a format for a way for the asset management community to see the different kinds of possibilities.
And that was me, and it's Matt Hardy from ASHTO. I'm the one that kind of suggested that one get things going.
Okay, good. Maintenance management systems for TAM. Benefit cost analysis tools specific to TAM to help better compete for grant applications. TAM's implementation and integration. So I'm assuming that comment is you'd like to see what tools are out there to help you implement and integrate. Benefit cost analysis, risk analysis tool, alignment of TAMP and STIP, tools for TAM's implementation, risk analysis tools. How about, there are two comments here about TAM implementation, or TAMs. I'm guessing that's TAM implementation, not system implementation. So I'm curious if people have, if there is a tool for that. Does anybody have one? If you know of one, can you just enter it into there? Implementation of cross-asset analysis in state DOTs. There are a lot of, there are a lot of tools available on the TAM portal. What about an overview of what's available there? Hey, is that you, Matt Hardy? Tools for assets beyond the federal minimum reportable assets. Matt, did you put the one about the TAM portal tools?
Maybe yes, maybe no. Yes.
You'll be doing that presentation. Lots of tools available, but we have very little time to understand the implementation of these tools. So maybe that's what people are talking about. Alignment of TAMP and STIP, visualization tools for performance gaps, annual implementation documentation template and tool. So maybe, again, that might be more likely a homegrown tool, but if agencies have something they've developed. What do you think of that, Matt Hobreck? Just the notion of different agencies have figured out, have made a tool or a way of doing things in a more sustainable way. and sharing of those?
Yeah, I mean, I think it can always be helpful to see, if folks have got something kind of figured out, although a lot of those are kind of internal, systems, but maybe can spur some thinking that might be useful. Oh yeah, okay, I forgot we have this work type thing. Maybe we can use that or whatever, So yeah, I think that those are some common problems that we hear. I guess, as we're kind of talking about that issue in particular, it gets me thinking about the consistency reviews and the annual process for that. I'm not necessarily suggesting that we need a tool for that, but I'm kind of curious if there are tools that we're using. Maybe that's something that we need to that would be useful.
Well, I mean, there's a comment here about, tool like what Laura was talking about, coding of projects. I mean, to me, that's probably more of a technique. It's not necessarily a tool, but that there's a way to, like, people, what's shareable is, how do you actually use an existing system of projects and code it in the proper way so that it aligns with your asset management work types, for instance, right? And so should we broaden this to not necessarily a tool in the sense of it's packaged and able to go, somewhere, but a way of doing something that is repeatable. Right? What do you? I mean, yeah,
no,
that may be
valuable, right? Sure. And especially if it's kind of consistent. I think somebody here mentioned something about FEMAS or whatever. If there's things that we kind of all have to face with, so that involve that, then that may be particularly useful, because it all more or less should have in common, at least state level.
Yeah, maybe, yes, Jihan.
So Matt, are we're looking at like the comments here? So are we looking at only like technical tools like GIS tools, or we're looking at processes or like some documentation, lesson learned from other states? Because I could tell that this is also the trend in the comments that's put in there. So maybe we can combine both, have it more on the technology side and more of like a documentation or successful processes that other states put in place, and have both.
Right.
Very good.
Right. It's not like that packaged thing, right?
Right. It's just how we're defining the word tool at this point.
Right. No, these are all super interesting. So I think, it gives us a lot to work with to say maybe thematically we may have the things that are the packaged, kind of custom off the shelf kind of tools versus homegrown versus, even you could say homegrown, does that include spreadsheet based or things like that are shareable versus techniques for how you can solve a problem that everybody, or solve a way to do something that everybody has to do, like consistency, determination, reporting, and then visualization tools. Again, to me, when I see that is it more the tool on that versus, the way that someone has actually visualized that's shareable, right? That, like, if you can see a good visualization and duplicate it, that's wonderful. Right.
Yeah, that's a great point too. I mean, there's lots of different ways that we can get to a visualization. It's really the visualization itself that's oftentimes the where the real insight is coming from. So I think that you can do the same thing in a lot of the different tools. It's just a question of kind of getting to the point of using that. And of course, we have relatively recently added the VisGuide data to the TPM portal, and I'm not sure folks are really that familiar with that.
Yeah.
Resource,
Yeah.
and we also do have the project proposal and CHRP project proposal that we hope is successful in developing a visualization guide for TPM, so that tying that into this conversation certainly to me would be, and I think others as well.
Moda Rodeo.
Moda Rodeo, okay.
Yeah, and then someone I think put something about international tools. So maybe in the few minutes we have left, can people put in tools they're aware of? So consultants or people on the call who may, are providers of tools. Can you just enter them in to the into the entry here? And so if you know, or if you have one in your agency, a homegrown tool like the Climate Viewer, or Don, the one that you mentioned for MPOs, I think it's a spreadsheet-based tool, but it's still a tool that helps MPOs with their TAM process. That could be helpful while we're all together. And Matt, I think it would be good to, at the next committee meeting, to ask people for ideas as well. The more we can get that on the table.
I agree. It'd be nice to take the information that we've gathered here today and synthesize a little bit. We could talk about it and then bring it forward. One of the things that came up on the prior example too, kind of going back to Matt or whoever it was, the mystery person who indicated the showcase of the tools on the TPM portal, someone mentioned or asked about asset valuation, and I think we have a relatively new tool in support of asset valuation that's available now to the community, and maybe not everyone's aware of that. So I think that would be a really great opportunity to bring that idea up as well. Whatever smart Matt might have come up with that idea. So.
All right, back to you, Matt Hardy.
Am I closing us out today?
Yes.
I am. All right. So everyone, thanks for joining us today. I think the upcoming mini-series will be a lot of fun to do, interesting to sort of put together. So we, again, thank you for your input on that. Thanks for your participation today. I know we're all busy. Please stay engaged with our ASHTO subcommittee on asset management. There's a lot of good information that's getting disseminated and talked about every month. If you're not on those calls, if they're not on your calendar, they're the second Wednesdays. Please let me know. Send me an email, mhardy@ashto.org, and I can get you on those recurring calendar appointments. I think that's about it. Don't forget about the TAM portal. I think it's a great resource, tam-portal.com. We're going to get the mini series scheduled very, very soon, and we do have the TAM webinars every other month, and then opposite every other month are the TPM webinars. So we have something going on once a month dealing with the broad category of performance management. Again, if you're not involved, please do get involved. Go to the TAM portal, go to the TPM portal. And I think that's about it. Am I forgetting anything, Kiana or Matt Hobreck?
No, I think that's good.
All
Terry,
right.
can you put back up the Manthey one with the product idea, people offering? So Caltrans, PennDOT Bridge Care, scoping tools that combine GIS and integrated. All right, well, we'll leave it open for a few minutes. If you want to add to it, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, so again, thanks everyone. Have a great rest of the week. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you next month. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.